There are tons of mistakes that you might be making right now in ESO that are putting you behind the curve when it comes to things like questing, combat, skills, and many more fundamentals of the game, so I created this quick list of the top mistakes players are making in ESO, starting with number 1, starting in the wrong zone. Now, this mistake is going to directly affect new players more than anyone else. You see, once you complete the tutorial in ESO, you'll be given a variety of choices for where to go next depending on what DLC and chapters you've purchased. If you bought ESO Plus or got a special chapter deal, this can be an especially hard choice, but in my opinion, new players should start in a basic starter zone and not a DLC zone. The 3 basic starter zones, or alliance starting zones as they're sometimes called, are Canarthy's Roost, Stros Mackay, and Bleak Rock Isle. Now, the reason why new players should start here instead of in a DLC zone is because the content here is so much easier and more streamlined than anywhere else. These zones are small, meaning you can do all the starting quests and find all the sky shards here extremely quickly, helping to give your character a great head start. Enemies here are also pretty basic as well, and there's no world bosses or world events to kill you outright. Compare this to a chapter zone, for example, which is 3 to 4 times as large and has multiple special bosses or world events that will kill a new player in just a few seconds, and I think the difference here is pretty clear. First, a quick word from today's video sponsor, Terrasland. Terrasland is a classic MMORPG on PC and mobile devices featuring raids, diverse classes, crossplay, and a vast world for exploration. Derived from the classic warrior, mage, and priest classes, Terrasland features 9 distinct classes, with each class having 2 specializations for you to choose from. In terms of builds and progression, Terrasland includes a rich and flexible talent tree system. Challenge is also a part of the fun with Terrasland, which focuses on multiplayer raids, where you must cooperate with your team to overcome various unique game mechanics and epic level bosses. Plus, the game world is absolutely massive, featuring various puzzles and gameplay adventures to keep you exploring for hours on end. Of course, Terrasland also features crossplay, allowing you to engage with your friends across PC and mobile devices anywhere and anytime. And did I mention the awesome Terrasland soundtrack, which was created by former Blizzard composer Russell Brower, famous for creating epic soundscapes to games like Diablo, StarCraft, and World of Warcraft, which is the perfect complement to the game's art style, and in my opinion, it's definitely one of the best things about this game. Terrasland offers a truly memorable and engaging experience from start to finish, and you can check it out right now by using my link down in the description below. Thanks again to Terrasland for sponsoring this video, and let's get right back into it. Now that you know how and where to start your ESO adventure, the next mistake you definitely don't want to make is going straight into gameplay without adjusting any of your game settings. For starters, check out your gameplay settings and make sure you've enabled custom colors for both friendly and enemy effects. You can change the color here to whatever you want, but also make sure the brightness is turned up high enough for you so that you can actually see it. Staying in friendly effects while also avoiding enemy effects is a big part of ESO that new players especially can struggle with. I also recommend diving into the combat section here and turning on as much information as possible. This means always showing ability bars, ability bar timers, back bar timers, attribute bars, resource numbers, and your ultimate numbers. There's really no reason that any of these should be turned off during normal gameplay, unless you want to take screenshots, and there is actually a dedicated screenshot mode for that anyway, so turn all of these on. Don't forget to turn buffs and debuffs on as well. This creates icons for each effect and displays them above your skill bar with a countdown timer, which is super helpful. And this goes hand in hand with another common mistake, which is accidental stealing from NPCs and vendors. Now, this happens quite a lot in main towns where a vendor might have a few items on display next to them, and when you try to target the vendor to purchase something, you end up targeting that item instead and just stealing it without intending to. Again, there is actually a setting for this in the gameplay section. Just make sure to turn on Prevent Stealing Placed Items. But now that we've covered some basic starting mistakes, let's move into town again and discuss things you should be doing every day in ESO. If you don't do these regularly, you're going to quickly fall behind in terms of your character progression. And the big one here is forgetting to train up your riding skills every day. In ESO, there are actually 3 separate mount riding skills that you can boost daily, that being riding speed, riding stamina, and carrying capacity. It's up to you which one you want to focus on first, or even if you want to level them up evenly. But just remember to be consistent. Since you can only boost 1 skill per day, essentially, that's at least 180 days to reach max level for your character. It also helps if you log out your character every day next to the riding trainer, so that when you log into the game the following day, it can be the first thing you do and you won't forget. Another huge mistake in ESO is not doing your research. And I'm not talking about builds or guides. I'm talking about actual in-game trait research. Now, much like mount training, learning traits in ESO is something that takes an immense amount of time, so you want to start this process right away. Simply head to a crafting station and it will tell you exactly what gear you're holding that has a trait that you can research. When I start off, I don't really care what traits I get at first. I just want to consistently unlock new traits every day with whatever I have on me. The obvious benefit of researching is that once you unlock a certain amount of traits for a particular piece, let's say 3 or 5 traits for a two-handed greatsword, you can then unlock powerful crafted sets like Order's Wrath for that particular gear piece. But traits in ESO are even more valuable due to the transmutation and gear reconstruction systems. And with these two powerful methods, you can completely change the trait of a piece of gear or create a new gear piece from scratch. The only catch here is that you must have that particular trait researched first before you can change a gear piece to it or reconstruct a new one. So at minimum, you want to make sure you have the best traits researched right away. Traits like Divines for armor, Precise for weapons, and Bloodthirsty and Infused for jewelry so that you can make full use of the transmutation system even if you don't plan on becoming a master crafter further down the road. Now that we're talking about gear, I want to mention a very common mistake, which is forgetting to repair your armor whenever you have some downtime. That's because you never want your armor to fully break in ESO, especially in the middle of content like a dungeon or a trial or a solo arena. Broken gear in ESO is a huge no-no for many reasons. Basically, each armor piece you're wearing has a durability meter that's going to gradually get lower over time. Now, once this meter reaches 0, your armor piece is officially broken, and you'll actually start to lose its armor and the other stats it provides. Luckily, you do get notified with this red icon on the heads-up display whenever you have at least one armor piece broken, so you'll want to repair it as soon as possible, either through a merchant or using repair kits. And this is especially important if your build uses any armor skills at all. Now, the light armor shield skill Dampen Magic is fairly common. It's a powerful skill actually, but you actually won't be able to cast it anymore if your broken pieces of armor take you under the 5 pieces of armor required to cast the skill. Believe me, you do not want your damage shield to stop working in the middle of combat. That's basically the worst thing that can happen, so you really need to pay attention to your gear and make sure it's repaired frequently. But if you found these tips to be helpful so far, do me a favor and crush that like button. That actually helps let YouTube know to share this video with more ESO players, which is a great thing. We also have a really unique membership here on YouTube called the Elite Squad, where our YouTube members actually get access to even more ESO content, like exclusive members-only builds and guides, including the extended version of this video. And you can click on the join button down below to learn more about that if you're interested. The next mistake on our list is not using a Mundus Stone, and this detail is super easy to overlook, especially when you're setting up your build for the first time, and especially for new players, as the Mundus Stones in ESO do not exist in the starting areas which we mentioned. They also do not exist in any of the DLC zones or chapter zones, so you actually need to know where to look to find these. But that being said, any Mundus Stone at all is a huge improvement over not using one, so just get one, whatever it is, and upgrade it later to something that suits your build better once you get more experienced. Now, I go over this in more detail in my complete ESO build guide. I'll have the link for that right here if you want to check it out. But I also have another recommendation. If you're just starting, pick up the Steed Mundus. This is actually great for new characters because it gives you extra movement speed and a little bit of extra health recovery, which is not bad either. Next up, let's talk about consumables. And generally, I think players worry way too much about this in ESO. Yes, consumables like potions and food or drink buffs are important, but you don't need to spend a ton of gold on them. If we were to check prices right now, you can see just how expensive something like a batch of spell power potions can be. And then when you look at the best food options, those being gold quality food items, these are also insanely expensive, talking thousands of gold per unit, which is crazy. So usually I do not bother with these types of consumables. They're just not worth it for most players. For potions, just use the basic Magicka or Stamina potions to restore your stats. Then to make up some of the buffs you might be missing from the more powerful types of potions, we're talking weapon and spell damage buffs or critical chance buffs, you can also get those from gear sets or from skills. This is a great trick to save you a ton of gold in the long run. Now, an example of a gear piece that can give you those same buffs is something like the Oakensoul Ring, which gives you access to spell and weapon power buffs. which gives you the same buffs as a spell or weapon power potion for free 100% of the time. And you can also use skills like the Mage's Guild Inner Light for that Prophecy and Savagery buff, or Degeneration for Sorcery and Brutality. Certain skills from your class skill lines may give you the same buffs as well. And finally, for food options, I most always use the free food I get from daily rewards, especially if I'm leveling up a newer character. This is nearly as good as gold quality tri-stat food. Or if you want something with more recovery, just go down a level to purple quality Witch Mother's Potent Brew or Dubious Cameron Throne, which usually sells for only a few hundred gold per drink, which gives you almost the same stats, but is much more affordable. A related mistake to this is actually letting your food or drink buff wear off when you're in the middle of combat. This is going to be a huge problem because you're going to lose tons of stats, and if you're in the middle of something like a difficult boss fight, it's actually going to make a huge difference. So make sure you have those buff timer icons turned on. We talked about that in the earlier mistake, talking about gameplay settings. And if you see that you have, a couple minutes left on that food buff, go ahead and refresh it, even if it's not done yet. This way you won't forget and then lose all those stats in the middle of combat. But another common mistake I see a lot is not unlocking your guild skills right away in ESO. And this includes skills like the Fighter's Guild, Mage's Guild, and the Undaunted. Now to do this, just head to your main Alliance city. In this example, I'm in Davin's Watch, and you're going to speak to the quest giver for each guild. The Mage's Guild and the Fighter's Guild should be marked on your map and are pretty easy to find, while the Undaunted may take some searching, but typically anywhere you can buy drinks is a good place to find the Undaunted. This is important not just to see and start tracking these skill lines, but especially for the Fighter's Guild, because it only levels up by killing Daedra and undead creatures or by closing dolmens, and it will not progress at all unless you've already unlocked the skill line before that point. So it's best to do this right away, especially if you're starting a brand new character, so that you don't waste any of that progression from killing those enemies or defeating dolmens. Let's talk combat next, and a huge mistake that you don't want to make, and that is skipping your light attacks. Now, light attacks are the most basic attack type in ESO, but they do a lot more than just damage. For example, light attacks will proc your weapon glyph, which can apply useful status effects or restore resources. Light attacks are also key for triggering certain sets, as well as powerful skills and bonuses for specific classes. And did you know that light attacks also proc an invisible bonus on your character that generates ultimate? You can watch in this example as I use my skills. You can see I'm not generating any ultimate at all here in this case, but as soon as I use just one light attack, the ultimate generation buff kicks in and earns me 27 ultimate over the next few seconds. This will continue during the course of combat as long as you're mixing in those light attacks between your normal abilities, and the ultimate generation even continues after combat ends, which is a huge tip for maximizing those ultimate casts. Another combat issue that I see pretty often is resource management, especially in group content, and this has to do with players that run out of stamina after sprinting for too long or doing too many dodge rolls in a row. Now, you definitely don't want to do this because it leaves you incredibly vulnerable and you won't have enough stamina left to break free from crowd control effects when you need to, most likely resulting in your death. Now, here's a trick to help you learn exactly how much stamina you need to reserve in order to break free in case you get CC'd. Open up your advanced stats area, which you can see both on PC and consoles, and look at your break-free cost. On my Magicka Templar, it's about 4,000 stamina. Then compare this number to your total stamina pool. In my case, I have about 16,000 stamina, so that means I need at least 4,000 stamina, or about 25% of my total stamina pool to break free at any time. Knowing this, I never want to dip under that 25% mark on my stamina bar. And if I get too close to this, then I need to stop sprinting right away and conserve my roll dodges and blocks until my stamina goes back up into a safer area. Now, this is going to be different though for every build depending on your total stamina, so be sure to check your stats like I just showed you. Now, there are so many item sets and gear options in the Elder Scrolls Online that it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And the mistake that you definitely might make is forgetting to equip gear sets to add those drops to your collection. Now, the collection system is a huge part of ESO, and it's a big quality of life improvement if you use this system correctly. Basically, what collections does is it adds pieces of gear to a sticker book, and this allows you to reconstruct the gear you've collected using transmute crystals. We already talked about how you need to research traits to actually reconstruct the gear, which is important as well. But the part that gets missed all too often in this case is that when you pick up most gear in ESO, it doesn't get collected automatically. to collect gear, in most cases, you need to bind it first. This means actually equipping the piece on your character to bind it to them, or simply using the bind option in your inventory screen. Once you do this, the item will actually appear in your collections so that you can reconstruct it later. Selling gear to a merchant for gold also accomplishes the same thing, but one final important aspect here has to do with curated set drops. This means that enemies in dungeons, for example, will only drop set pieces that you haven't already collected. So if you want to complete your sticker book and get all the possible pieces, getting that gear collected ASAP is going to be important. For example, you'd want to do this as soon as you get a drop in a dungeon so that the following drop that you get on the next boss won't be a duplicate. But that leads us to the number one mistake for this video, and that is skipping ESO's main story. Now, I know it's really tempting to forge ahead and try to farm experience or gain levels as quickly as possible to reach that end game, but a major problem with that approach to playing ESO is that you won't have nearly enough skill points to unlock everything you need for your character if you rush ahead. For a truly complete and balanced character, you not only need skills, but you also need lots and lots of passives, all of which take skill points to unlock. And what's great about every main story quest in ESO is not only do you get tons of experience in the process, but you also get skill points for completing every main story quest, which adds up very, very quickly. Plus, it's just good all-around content, teaches you the story of the game and many of its major locations, factions, and characters. But trust me, take your time, don't rush, and you will enjoy the game so much more. But hopefully you all found this beginner guide helpful. If there's any big mistakes that I missed, make sure to let us know down in the comments section below. We also actually have an extended version of this guide with even more mistakes and beginner tips posted in our members area. That's for our Tier 2 Elite Squad channel members. We'll also get tons of other perks like members-only builds, early access to guides, and members-only Discord. Plus, it's a great way to support the channel. A huge shout out as always to our amazing membership team. Thank you all so much for the support. I could not do this without you. And thanks to all of you for watching this video, and I will see you around in the next one.